suspect it's going to prove nothing this time. However, the Woodies are into the final, HG, at Wimbledon against, I think, Philippoussis and Rafter. So we have the best and second best, arguably, doubles team in the world. Greg Norman is back at #1. I think he won the St Jude Classic. I think he took out a chap by the name of Dud Hart.
Yes. Dud by name, Dud by nature.
Isn't he a terrible?
Yes, he is.
Dud Hart. Nature. The Shark's better than Dud. Not by much, 1 stroke in it. And speaking of strokes, as we speak, Australia is 3 for 39.
Yes, 3 for 39. In
the Test match. So it puts us about 100 in front, which may well be enough. Taylor was out for 1, people might be interested to know. He's invented yet another way of getting out, which is, he's a lefty, you're given to understand.
Do you want me to be the bowler?
Oh, you can do it. You can if you like. There was absolutely no footwork this time. None. Just a big date, big note. Ball came, plunked the back out. That was the movement. Which propelled him that way off, so it was dunk.
Yes, come on, yes, and Roy, if I could get you to order those things, do you think seeing the cockroach on Mars, you know, is that far out there with the Woody, say, 2nd, Greg Norman 3rd and Mark Taylor 4th in that series?
It's very difficult to order, isn't it?
It is.
But I think I'd put Mars last.
And with that as way of setting the scene here on the Mars Bar, it's now a great thrill to welcome a man who has basically been a piece of the Australian landscape for as long as anyone can remember. Certainly he's right up there with the Big Banana, the Kiama Blowhole and the Victor Harbour Bluff. Listen, Cedric, can you commandeer the tour bus sound system and give us the Gough Whitlam story?
Constitutional dreams, institutional schemes, a very big man by foul means lost power. Gough Whitlam had power, drinking ideas as easy as beers. Gough Whitlam, constitutional mess, a nation distressed, a natural patrician, the labor magician with power. Gough Whitlam has power, mentally fit, sharp with the wind. Gough Whitlam, Gough
Thanks very much for coming in, Gough, and you've got a new book out, Abiding Interests, which is a sort of an
What's it called?
Abiding Interests.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Now, this is... Could I just refresh your memory here? It's, if I could be so bold and suggest, it's a sort of an autobiography of ideas that you've been interested in, say, in the past 80 years.
I'm an ideas man.
An ideas man. And so one thing that I'd like to talk about, the idea of the Olympic Games. Now, your role in shoring up the tricky African vote to get the Olympic Games to come to Sydney hasn't been widely acknowledged enough. But you gave a number of African nations assurances about human rights vis-a-vis Australia. How do you feel about those assurances today?
I'm glad that the Olympics are not being sought by Sydney now.
Yes. Because I
wouldn't have got the 2004.
No.
But I must pay tribute to my partner, because wherever we went in Africa, of course, they acknowledged her. Because she, of course, still holds one of the championships from the old Empire Games.
Yes.
Great swimmer. It was in yards.
So I'm very unlikely to be broken.
That's right, never will.
Yes. Now, I think at one stage Rolf Harris held a Empire Games record too. It might have been in the backstroke. So I'm wondering if it was that, you know, might have been a bit easier to get them then than now. I don't want to put the... No, competition was fierce.
I can remember Rolf Harris's greatest song. I remember hearing it up years ago in Townsville. It was something like, "Take them off, Gough." And I don't think there's any poem of his I can remember since.
Now,
What did he mean? The trousers? Take the trousers off? What's
I
that?
assume so, but he had the wrong Prime Minister.
maybe
No.
maybe it should have been.
My sport was rowing.
Yeah.
Great discipline.
Yeah.
And it's very good for a party leader because you can look one way and go the other.
Maybe.
I assumed you would have been the Cox if you were rowing.
Nothing like that. He looks the way you've gone.
Now, maybe Rolf
No
Harris's
cocks about me.
Rolf Harris's song should have been "Pull 'Em Down, Mal."
Well, presumably they were already down. No need to.
Pull 'em up, Mal might have been better. But coming back to the Olympics, look, can I suggest to you that in the heady days when Sydney got the Games, there was a happy convergence of people from all sides of politics who saw a golden age for Australia dawning in the year 2000.
Gold.
Yes, gold. Under a new flag,
Yes.
with maybe a couple of additions or changes to the Constitution.
Yes.
Which would, properly take Australia into the new millennium.
Yes.
That dream has powdered badly, hasn't it?
Well, of course, the only Olympic Games that have been ever opened in Australia were done on behalf of our head of state by Prince Charming himself.
Yes.
The Duke.
Yes.
Gough, I noticed that say Bob Hawke was very much into sports.
Who?
Bob Hawke, very much.
Yeah, I remember.
He was sort of very hands-on with your sports. Paul Keating very hands-on with the clocks. Were you hands-on with anything
Rhymes with
yourself?
clocks.
Well, not quite. But were you a hands-on sort of person? I mean, were you a fiddler with donks? I mean, were you a motorhead in younger days? Did anything propel you in this way, like, out in the backyard with tools, fiddling about?
Off. None of that with my staff.
Yeah. Because I think you're only the second person I've met who had personalised number plates. I believe you had an old Valiant many years ago, a white Valiant with EGW000 number plates. Is this the case? Peter Brock's the only other person I know who's had personalised.
EGW999.
Was it? Did you request the personalised number plates? It seems to me an odd thing to do because people would spot the car now. It was you and two Bob detailer.
They all did it at that.
Well, they all did it. Everyone got personalised number plates.
You mean Patrick Albert Field had PAF on the number plate? This is a bit of trivia knowledge
This
here.
is a family program.
Yeah, no, I don't want to get started on that. No. Look, can I ask, going back to the Olympics, have you met Juan Antonio Samaranch?
Indeed. Yes.
And I must say, how would you approach a person like that, knowing his track record, say, with dropping the hanky with the blindfolds on and bang? How did you get on with meeting a person of that sort of background, for want of a better word?
Did it rankle calling him Excellency?
No, it was mutual. Well, excellentissimo.
Yes. But what surprises me about...
I've been to Spain, as you know.
Yes. And it's changed quite a lot since Juan lived there in the old days.
Since I visited myself,
Yes. What I was going to say...
No, he was from Catalonia.
Oh, yes.
He's Catalan, he's not real Spanish.
Right.
I mean, if it was his Spanish, it'd be Samaranch.
Oh, OK.
Oh, yes, Samaranch, she's Catalan.
Now, do you think the way he organises sort of the Olympic movement is that it's a wise thing for people, well, I was going to say to get into bed with? It seems to be a rather difficult organisation which has very little to do.
Well, they still argue whether it's a good idea to go into bed the night before or not.
Yes.
Does it improve your appearance or
performance?
Yes. It depends whether it's short or long run events, I think.
Yes. And what would you think about Juan's case in this, that he shouldn't get into bed the night before in terms of saying, pronouncing Sydney and sort of, if he'll obviously be there to announce the next games?
I don't know that he'd be long enough in bed to have a shot.
Now,
was going to say, speaking of world leaders, and I suppose we'd have to include His Excellency as being, you know, certainly a prominent figure. But what about others? President Suharto, for example, is he a particularly erudite man? I know you've met him a number of times. He's described in the book here as honourable. Is he erudite?
I don't know, because we don't speak the same language. We go through the interpreter.
Sure.
And the interpreter impresses me with his English and probably impresses the President with my...
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Bahasa.
But does that make meetings awkward? Say, for example...
Not at all.
OK. With, say, meeting
agreement.
Mao Zedong or Deng Xiaoping. I mean, were they difficult meetings as well?
I only met Mao Zedong once, God rest his soul, and he floored me, actually. He said, you know, I, of course, said the proper things. I said, well, of course, the difference between our systems, because there's two systems, you know, now in China, that we believed in evolution, he in revolution. And he said, Darwinism. I said, yes. He said, was Port Darwin named after Darwin? And I must confess, I wasn't quite sure. And I got it wrong, but I sent him back a note afterwards, you know, making an apology. Yeah. Because if you're wrong there, of course, you get out of it if you make a fulsome apology.
Right, right, right. So apart from the odd...
But of course, was able to tell him then, in fact, Darwin had come to Sydney and crossed the mountains. Didn't go to Darwin. That was so named by the chap who had brought Darwin to Sydney.
Yes, that's
right. And he later went to Port Essendon and made it Port Darwin.
That's right. I think Darwin made some pretty astute observations about Australia at the time, that the soils were most infertile and it was unlikely that many people could live here.
I think that was Cook.
No, it was Darwin.
Was it? Well, I apologize. No, you're in charge.
If you want to write Roy a letter later on, I'll give you the address. I'll give you the address.
What language?
He speaks all languages, Roy.
Does he? Yeah.
Hey, look, can I ask about whether influence is better to have than political power? Like, you appear to me to still be very influential in Australian life.
Of course.
And whether this is better now than having the power of being Prime Minister.
I have more influence now than when I had the power.
You might say that. Yeah.
And with regard to leadership, is leadership, say, sort of intrinsically patronising? Is it a case of saying, I know what's right for people, rather than listening and saying, I know now what people want? I suppose what I'm saying is, do you listen and go by polls, or do you lead from the front?
You'll certainly look at and listen to what people are thinking and saying and wanting.
Yes.
But then, of course, you come out with the ideas which will fulfil their aspirations.
Right, right. Well, what if you
do... That is, you don't wait to see what, from polls...
Well, why aren't polls about... What if there's a movement that says, all right, we want capital punishment? Now, there's an intellectual elite that says, well, capital punishment doesn't work for these
if you had a poll, the capital punishment would be carried. But it's only savage countries like China or the United States which still have capital punishment.
This I understand, but do you then spend a lot of time educating people to the right way of thinking?
Yes, of course you do.
Right. So that is leadership, educating people.
Yes, giving them ideas, knowing their concerns, and then coming out with proposals which have a good chance of meeting and those concerns and fulfilling their aspirations. Right. That's what leadership is.
Right. Well, having read the book, it seems to me that you haven't put a bloody foot wrong here, Gough, according to this book.
Nobody who writes any book has ever put anything wrong.
No.
But mine is a factual book.
I say, well, there are only two mistakes. One was...
A lot of politicians write fiction.
One was making John Kerr Governor-General.
Yes.
And the other was not sacking him a couple of days before when you had the chance. Before the big one.
There was never any impropriety on my part. I wouldn't have sacked him. But I will admit that subsequent Prime Ministers have shown better judgment in that respect than I did.
In selecting?
Yes, I'm not talking about their subsequent performance, because the job does go to the head of even good Labor people.
So does power then corrupt? Does it corrupt?
Yes, but the phrase was absolute power
corrupts absolutely. Well,
I didn't have absolute power. I've not been corrupted, of course. I still have influence.
Yeah, Juan Antonio seems to have absolute power when it comes to the Olympic movement. Is he
very
corrupted absolutely?
No, he doesn't have it absolutely, but he's a very good diplomat. He's a very persuasive person. And, of course, he knows what's going on in every continent. So the trouble with Australian diplomacy is that they often wondered what was happening in North America or Western Europe. At UNESCO in particular, I also got an idea what was going on in Spanish-speaking countries.
Mao Zedong was there.
And African
was corrupted absolutely then.
I would think so, yes.
President Suharto, was he corrupted absolutely?
No. It's quite remarkable that President Suharto has remained in power so long. See,
with an army like that, it's no surprise at all.
It's not a large army. He has got a bigger fighting force than we have. But what he does, see, the people that cover these things go to the city alone. His strength is in the countryside. And Sukarno, of course, he made everybody in that vast archipelago understand and use the one language. President Suharto is enabling him to read and write it. And everywhere in the countryside, there's a very great deal of appreciation, as I understand it, of what he's about. It amazes me that he has lasted so long, or that anybody can last that long. But he has, in fact, delivered the goods to a very great extent. See, when we get foreign affairs, of course, you used to have ABC correspondents in every country. Yeah. But otherwise, we get our foreign news from American press, or in some cases where Americans don't know what's going on, like the Balkans, you get it from Austria or Bavaria.
Gough, can I say that this book covers, obviously, you know, interests that you've had for a very long time, constitutional matters, Aboriginal land rights, engagement with Asia and stuff. Are we making any progress?
Well, not only in Asia, with the
rest of the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, certainly you've got to understand our neighbourhood too.
But do you think we're making progress in these issues? We seem to have come to a full stop with a lot of them. Then we'd sort of...
There was a big hitch in 96, undoubtedly. But I think, somewhat belatedly, even John Howard's learning. You wouldn't get him on Club Buggery, of course.
No.
You only get Labor leaders on Club Buggery, don't you?
Yeah, you try to.
I mean, I would have thought that that bloke in Victoria, he's as good a clown as you'd find anywhere.
Cheerful note, it's time to wish Gough all the best for a long political future, and I ask everyone, whether they're at home or here in the Mars Bar, to get out their copies of the Constitution and bang them together to thank Gough Whitlam.
Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely.
Fascinating. Oh, I love this music. And it's coming from the same source as the Molly signal. Correct.
You are getting very sleepy. 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 Now, close your eyes. Now, open them. Good. You are now in my power. Say something rude.
Oh, Satan, give me your glistening, throbbing, purple.
Yes. Good. Fair enough. Now, stand up and walk into the wall. Great. Now, when I tell you to wake up, you'll wake up and you won't remember a thing about this, okay?
Yes, Ajax.
Right. Wake up!
Where am I? Oh, sorry, Ajax. I must have been daydreaming.
Great! Hey, a fire!
What do you want, Ajax?
You are getting very sleepy.
I am?
Look at the orb. You are getting very sleepy.
Listen, Ajax, I've got other things I want to do. This is a very unamusing game, okay?
Oh, okay. Sorry. So, it doesn't work on everyone. I wonder if it'll work on Dog Rooter. Because if it does, I can force him to hand control back over to me where it rightfully belongs.
O'Leary, what are you doing here?
Just thought I'd drop in.
He tried to play with me this afternoon.
Did you, O'Leary?
Well, sort of.
And what sort of game was this?
An orb sort of game.
An orb sort of game. How interesting. How does it work, O'Leary?
Well, I wave this orb in front of your face, and I tell you to go to sleep, and you do.
Intriguing. Is it fun?
Sure.
I thought it was dull.
Give me a go.
Oh, well,
Give me the orb.
it takes practice.
To wave an orb, give it to me. I order you to. Now, look at the orb, O'Leary. Now go to sleep. Amazing. O'Leary is asleep.
Great game.
Well, it is interesting. He's asleep on his feet, so there must be some motor neuron activity. I wonder if he can hear me. Can you hear me, O'Leary?
Yes.
Amazing. He's awake and can speak, yet still asleep. What is the purpose of this game, O'Leary?
To hypnotize and thus gain control over the sleeping subject.
So you are in my power.
Yes.
I love it. And you wanted to hypnotize me, I suppose, so as to gain control of the BG.
Yes.
O'Leary, you are an idiot.
Yes.
O'Leary, what do you have most difficulty in talking about?
My scrotum.
Next time you see Muff Merkin, you will engage her in conversation about your scrotum. Understood?
Yes.
Now, entertain us for a while by singing the Torb from Novus 9.
Tall and wild and horned and hairy, the Torbs from Novus 9 go walking, and when they pass, I bark, but nobody sees.
Oh, good morning, Ajax.
Ah, Merkin. I don't believe you've ever seen my bowling bag.
Sorry?
My bowling bag. My ugly sack. Uncle Dick's cousins.
I'm sorry, Ajax. I have no idea what you're talking about.
I'm talking about my funny hat. The pounding pouch. My thumbless boxing glove. The trouser twins.
O'Leary, this is excellent.
The gusset goiter.
I like the orb game.
I love the orb game.
Merkin, I must introduce you to Lionel Murphy's nose.
Now that the stitches are in place and the blood is congealed and the healing's begun and the bandages are on, look, could you give us an overview of the Iron Mike Tyson bite last weekend in Las Vegas? I suppose I wanted to sum up is how easy is it to get the teeth through the ear?
HG, can I just say from the off that I think it's one of the greatest things that's ever happened to boxing. I've never seen or heard so many people discussing boxing. It's really put boxing back on the map. It ran the risk of disappearing into forgettability. But it's back with us. Boxing is back centre stage. The world is talking boxing. Look, I wrote to the blokes at CSIRO and asked them to about the thorny problem of biting through an ear. I've only nipped an ear in a scrum, as we exampled last week on this very program. And what the blokes did, they sent me back some Freddo frogs.
Oh, yes, yes.
And they argue that a Freddo frog going through an ear, as Iron Mike did, is not dissimilar in terms of difficulty, degree of difficulty, to going through a Freddo frog.
Right.
Now, you'll find with a Freddo frog, as you go in, you've got to pull away. So there's an in, give it a go.
All right.
You go in.
Well, I just want to see the technique.
And
Right.
And that's not dissimilar to Evander Holyfield's ear, I think you'll find. See what I mean?
You can get through it quite easily, can't you?
And you're left with a little bit in there, which is the difficulty and the problem Iron Mike had.
Right.
He had the problem. What do I do? Chew it, pretend it's gum. Look cool.
Put the hands down.
Haughty style.
That's right.
Dance about. Knowing that the bloke knows that you've got a bit of a ear in his mouth. And he's keen to get it back. He's going to come at you to try and buddy you up and freeze it somewhere so you can put it back on later.
With the
gloves on. Very difficult to do.
Right.
He probably ended up trying to bite it out of his mouth. Bite it back. So it is difficult.
Right.
It is difficult. They also sent me an acupunctural sort of ear.
Yeah, guide to the ear.
A guide to the ear. Now,
Yeah.
as soon as I can tell, he's lost the points number 1 and 2.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see the points there, your acupuncture points. Now, I think they correspond to the liver and the kidneys.
Yeah, so you'd be feeling pretty good.
He'd be over the moon. Over the moon. His liver and kidneys probably never been in better shape. So I think it opens up all sorts of possibilities. I think a new sport could come out of this. I don't know if it's a sort of kick-biting sort of idea, I don't know. But it's not terribly unattractive. I think it could work. I think people would... Look, if there is a return bout...
Ah, well, let's hope there is.
...between Evander and Iron, everyone will be watching.
Oh, no.
Everyone will be paying the $39.50. Everyone. Just to see what happens. Especially if they're allowed to go the nip.
Yeah.
If there's a change in the rules. And I think there should be a change in the rules.
What,
Free it up!
1 nip per round?
As many nips as you like.
Right, just come
You can
out.
either go the bash, or you can get into the clinch and you'd have the very attractive sight of 2 big blokes having a go at each other's ear. Until all the ear's gone, there's nothing left, there's just a sort of hole there, bleeding. Very attractive in itself. Where do you go from there? Nose. Going to the nose, you'd have eyelids being bitten off, bits of face, then you might go south.
Roy...
Looking for bits.
Yes, something that protrudes.
Something to protrude.
Yes, that can go in a hole and get the teeth around, etc.
Exactly.
Yes. So that could,
Exactly.
as you say, that could get...
Tremendous sport that'd be.
People watching, couldn't it?
I mean, boxing's been held back all this year. I'd get rid of the bloody gloves, get rid of everything. Have them nude, just blokes. Blokes with bloody nails and teeth.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
That's a sport.
And obviously people on Monday morning did have something to talk about over the cup of cocoa at work.
Yes.
Whereas otherwise, you know, they would have said, oh, Evander Holyfield, I am Iron, or Evander won in 3 rounds, or whatever it was. I lost my money at the TAB and so on.
Yeah, that's right.
The bite, man, did you see the bite? Oh, what do you think?
I saw the ball. What were you doing in the bite? It was like one of those events, just like when JFK was shot.
Yeah, well, Australia got the Sydney Olympics.
Australia got the Sydney Olympics.
Should I say Sydney got the Olympics?
Or Australia too brought home the America's Cup.
Or Australia 3 sank, if that's Australia 3 sank.
Yeah, one Australia.
One Australia.
Yeah,
Now, look,
yeah. One of those great moments.
How did Australia respond? And can I ask you to form a triangle of views? Arthur Tunstall's view is very important. Obviously, Jeff Fennick's important. His view is because he's obviously hands-on, both in the boxing and the biting. And also Aussie Joe Boosner, who probably got out of the sport before biting became part of it.
He did. Well, I was going to say that, well, Boosner is still in.
Oh, of course, you forget that, don't you?
He's the PABA champion.
Yeah, heavyweight champion.
Heavyweight champion. I mean, he's queuing up to have a go at Iron on the bite because he's got a very big mouth. He's got a very big... I'd say he's had the biggest mouth and the biggest grip in world boxing.
That's a big rap,
That's a very big rat. Yeah. He could take Iron Mike's whole bloody head. And that's what he'd go for. He wouldn't be an ear man. No. Whoa. You'd have the bloke out there kicking out. The head gone, blood coming out. The head totally off. Spat into his second's face. Do something with that. You don't sit there with a bloke like a chook, headless chook. That's a sport. That's going to get kiddies queuing up, going to see Trainer Lewis. Where can I bloody sign?
I want to get into the headless look. Yes. Roy, what I was thinking of though was do you think that the whole world of boxing, with say, Australia's response to it, and I did see people in clubs across Australia hurling chairs at television screens, walking off, stomping off. Yeah, very disappointed.
The short view.
Oh, yeah.
The short view. You've got to take the longer view with these things.
Yeah, true.
You've got to see the absolute possibilities that are opening up. There's a chink there, a chink that's opened up. You've got to tear it apart and dive through the new world.
Right. And so you would favour, say, those three, Tunstall, Fenwick and Boozner, getting round a round table and coughing up new rules.
New rules.
To take boxing into the next millennium.
Yeah. Grow your nails as long as you like. Yeah. File your teeth if you like. Right. Get them pulled out and get steel ones put in. Who bloody cares? As long as you can do some bloody damage.
Yeah, wouldn't the tail of the tape be interesting? You know, Joe Boozner comes sporting the new dentures, you know.
Teeth down to here.
That's right.
Yeah, that's it. Have this unhooked here.
And leaving that there for the minute, my very good friends, in the interest of bringing you, the Australian audience, the very best in variety from around the world, it's a tremendous thrill to welcome to the Mars Bar a foursome who were fiddling about in Africa this time last week. Tonight, the lads are tuned up with a foot flat to the floor and ready to rip into the Paul Simon medley of Gracelands and You Can Call Me Al. Customers, can you limber up and limbo along the Limpopo as you welcome to the Bug House, the Soweto String Quartet! the Hey Shirley Wake Up arrangement of the Paul Simon medley. Of course, the tremendous work from the Beatles and the Cedrics, and what about the Soweto String Quartet? Straining the strings and plucking to perfect pitch. And the lads will be touring near you during the coming fortnight, so check the local papers for the dates. And now let's cross over to the cricket and have a look at what Channel 9 should be showing instead of that drivel, instead of that sodden drivel called Wimbledon. Look, we've got a tremendous scoreboard here because they're at lunch.
Oh, we're 5 down.
Oh, yes. Oh, not quite, not quite.
Oh, no, I was looking at the no ball. Sorry.
Yes, that's right.
3 down.
England were all out for 162. Shane Moore got 6 for 48. And we do have a terrific dismissal here early on. Here we go now. I think this is the first run that Mark Taylor scored, or the third run. He gets a beautiful one.
It's a beautifully crafted run, isn't it?
It is.
From the misfield.
So confident. Very, very confident. And now let's have a look at what happens on the next delivery as we see a person here with sunglasses on.
That might have been Butcher.
And now we have this Demon U first test cap coming in and bowling to Mark
He's a
Taylor.
tear-away, isn't he? Look at this.
Tremendous. Oh, look at that. That's tremendous. And
Gone.
that's the dismissal of Mark Taylor. And so that, you know, take us through that, Roy. How did
Well,
you
I took us through it, I think, right from the off at the start of the show.
Yes.
No movement of feet, no movement of bot, nothing happening in the mind. Just a bloke who, well, nothing happening really. A sort of waste of space in pads.
Yes. But that run, that first run, there was nothing wrong with that.
There was nothing wrong with it.
And it looked good. It looked good. As though it could go on,
no, that's right.
maybe get another 99 and put it together with that one and get it.
But he did look confused with the misfield. He didn't want to take that run.
No.
It took Elliott to call him through. You know, come on through, Skip. Come on, Skip, you can do it.
Remember Bob
Come on,
Simpson?
get the legs. Go on, get that bloody big bot. Move that along.
Remember Bob Simpson, the quick single? Quick single wings matches. Now it's time to welcome to the Bughouse a man who came from the suburb of Bicton in WA many, many, many moons ago. Nissan Cedrics, can you plonk your bot on the spot in the front bar of the Ocean Beach Hotel, Cottesloe, and bring a tear to the eye of the regulars with the Dave Warner story?
Out of the suburbs, turning the corner, as natural as any western fauna. Dave Warner, Dave Warner, student of words, loves the absurd. Dave Warner started with songs, moved on to books, love let his mind mingle with crooks. Dave Warner, Dave Warner, student of crime, doing his time. Dave Warner, Dave Warner.
Yes. Thanks very much for coming in, Dave. Now let's get the hard question out of the road. How did you see the Mark Taylor dismissal?
Well, I saw it that he didn't move his feet again, HG.
Are you worried about the captain's form at all, or do you think he'll come good in the subsequent tests, or do we care?
I doubt it. I think it's the long, slippery road, and he made that ton, didn't he, which had everybody leaping to their feet to say, we never should have criticised, and I know you fellas wouldn't have.
Oh, no, we said we'd wait till he retired, and then we'd bag him. We'd bag him out of it. That's not a bad position to adopt, though.
I think as long as the ball doesn't do anything, Mark's a fair chance.
Yes, true, true. Now, look, you've got another, well, you've got an anthology of humour out, Great Australian Bites. You know, I'm just wondering if Australia needs another anthology of humour at the moment. Do you get on buses and hear people talking, God almighty, I wish I only had something to read, you know, could we get another anthology of humour together or something like that? You know, what's the genesis of this project?
It's more that, you know, what can I do to get a whole bunch of people together and flog off a few books?
Yeah, write a book without having to do the work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So that was a bit of it. You know.
And did you go to other great anthologies of Australian humour? You know, like Laughing at League, like the Max Walker How to Murder a Crocodile sort of series of books, and have a look at what they had done before you got yours together?
No, I just sailed blindly out and just took what influences I could and got in touch with, you know, people like yourself. And of course, Roy, for example, has given the complete secret to Rooting King's training schedule in the book. And so I think it's not just humour, it's a much broader spectrum than that.
Yeah, that's true. It's a didactic piece. The whole book really is a series of didactic pieces. Speaking of didactic pieces, Dave, you are a literary fellow, aren't you? You've when you were with the Suburbs all those years ago, there were songs of anger, songs of passion. What were you so bloody angry about in those days, mate? And are you as angry today?
Well, Angry Anderson was first, and he was angry, and...
Yeah, but you invented punk. You were ahead of your time, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. Well, I think I lived in Perth, and I think anyone who lived in Perth for that amount of time would be fairly angry. Yeah. And especially when you saw bands coming over to Perth, like Red House Roll Band, and...
hopeless.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopeless.
And, you know, you couldn't get a look in, so you got angrier.
Yes.
I don't think I went angry enough, actually, Roy.
No, that's probably right.
Peter Garrett was angrier, and he did much better.
True, and but I think you took umbrage too at Countdown in its early incarnation, when it was prosecuting the causes of limp overseas acts like Roger Voudouris.
Oh, well, who can forget Roger Voudouris? And
I mean, did that get up your nose? There you were plugging away ahead of your time at the cutting edge of anger, you know, the fusion of anger and music. Which has lived with us now for a hell of a long time. There you were, the cutting edge, Mr. D. Warner, being ignored by mainstream. Did that get up your nose?
It did. It did.
Well, you're ignored by Molly Meldrum, to be fair, Roy, who seem to have a, you know, this is ancient history, who seem to have a vice.
Have you got a feud with Molly Meldrum?
I think that the feud is dissipated if it ever was there, because I haven't seen Molly for so long.
Oh, right.
Now, you've taken to crime writing, and in a big way. I think your first novel, City of Light, was shortlisted for the Dublin Prize. Now, David Malouf would have spoilt your chances of winning that, because he won it the year before, didn't he?
Exactly, and so that wrecked any chance that any of the Australians had in the next year, as you know, like...
Did you get angry about that, Dave?
I got very angry about that.
David Malouf dutted me in Dublin. Top 10. Now,
well, look, sorry, can I just follow up the crime writing book? Because I finished reading this the other night. It's a jigsaw puzzle, Dave. How do you work out with little slips of paper? I mean, is it a case of starting, you know, with the first sentence and working your way through, or do you actually plan out the murder, plan out the way it was conceived? You know, how does it work? How do you start with something like this?
Well, the first book, City of Light, I wrote the first page and I worked from there. And that took me a long time. So on this one, Big Bad Blood, I was a lot more planning ahead. But a lot of work goes in the exercise book, drawing little lines to characters and, you know, thinking what might be a more interesting way of doing it.
Did you walk around King's Cross and take the name of the streets down, and if the bloke was standing here, well, they would have had to have been up there, and so, I mean, it is that detailed, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I don't know, it might be. I didn't...
Or that would be a Gregory's or a Melways. What did you do?
Well, we used to stay in King's Cross in the band day, so I just, you know, went... So I could be completely wrong, you know, where the places are, but... I mean, I didn't think that was so important as getting the feel of the cross and the seediness and that type of thing.
You know, this is, as Roy points out, you've written a couple of thrillers. You know, the thriller form, can we still get something out of it? I mean, or are we just repeating, you know, what Hammett and Chandler and, say, Jimmy Thompson did all those years ago? Is there real blood in here, Dave? Is there anger? Is there bagging David Malouf? Does it seep with
guts? And,
yeah, you know, and ideas and ferment and...
Well, I'd like to think so. I think, you know, James Elroy, and a lot of people have compared that to Elroy's style. He always says bigger, better, more characters. Yes. So I think you're taking the prototype of Chandler and those people and just throwing more in there.
Yeah, and Elroy, he's an easy person to copy too, isn't he?
Well, yeah, he's a long way away, so he doesn't find out so quickly.
And you don't have to write sentences with verbs in them if you copy his style.
That's right, yeah.
Yes, you can just write the cat, full stop.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. You do a... No, the verb does creep in about halfway through. I don't know if it's a stylistic device.
Only a couple of times.
Yeah, but there was no verb in the first 20 pages. That confused me. But the verb, you know, obviously when someone does something, you actually need a verb, especially when the crime is so bizarre, i.e., you know, cutting someone up in a pretty bad way and putting a cross up the date and writing weird words on the wall. It's a pretty hideous crime, isn't it?
Well, it's not a nice one.
Yeah, indeed, but it could be comparable with crime that happened in Sydney this week, which we should, for reasons of taste, avoid talking about. But
now, you've been writing for Big Sky. Did you do an episode of Big Sky for Channel 10?
Yeah, it hasn't yet hit the screens, so I don't know how it's going to, you know, how it will finally end up there.
Well, does the scenario arrive and you've just got to fill in the blanks? So the character's listed there with blanks beside them and the scenario, and you've just got to write the dialogue in? Is that how it is?
Well, that's how I think it should be, and hopefully, you know, that's more or less how it proceeded. We sat around and we kicked around a few ideas, but ultimately I think that's really what would happen. I'm sure the characters know what they're supposed to say. So, you know, you kick around a few scenarios of what would be a good thing to do, what could we have the pilots doing this time, and, you know, you throw in a story.
Look, I think it's terribly difficult writing for Big Sky. All you've got Sweetie in the plane there, a chair like this with a chroma key behind him. He nods away like this, turns to the co-pilot there, toes back here. Oh, we're going into the drink. Smash into the drink.
Lots of shots of the altimeter going like that.
I mean, then cutaway to a model plane, air-fixed model plane coming through, smoke pouring out. Back to
Feather engine 1. That's right. Feather engine 2.
Pull it up, pull
And you
it up.
respect those guys that wrote for Whirlybirds and Mike Nelson's Sea Hunt and all those big ones, you know. There's only so much you can do with an aqualung.
Now, your next book is going to be a Cricket Hall of Shame.
Yes.
You've done a Footy Hall of Shame already, a Cricket Hall of Shame, which I understand you're working with Greg Chappell on.
Yes.
Now, how forthcoming is Greg with the... Obviously, he's been very close to Australian cricket for many, many years. He's pioneered the underarm bowling. He's organised, you know, people to, if I believe the papers, to eat licorice-flavoured underpants off him. Are these the sort of things that are going to go in the Hall of Shame book?
I don't know about the... I don't know if we're getting the down south region about that yet, but certainly the underarm bowling, and I think Greg's very forthcoming on that these days. I think it's something he'd like to...
How about the day the two took the Sheffield Shield down? The two old players took the Sheffield Shield down, and you know, obviously
that was Ian Botham and
Dennis Lilly.
Dennis Lilly.
How about the feud in the car park? Is it between the both and Ian Chappell, Greg's brother?
Yeah.
Well, how about the Don's secrets? I mean, I hope you're going to lift the lid on the Don.
Greg Ritchie's flights.
Yes.
Is that the sort of book it's going to be?
Well, I'd hope so, but I think you boys, I think HG there has got a little bit more in than I have, so HG, I might have to be quizzing you on some of that, but yeah, there'll be that sort of stuff in there, plus, you know, just who are the hacks and who's failed and that type of thing.
Now, have you got, I know this puts a question without notice, if I could borrow a Goughism, you know, a very odd or unusual cricket stat that might bob up in this book. Have you got any, because cricket, let's face it, is full of stats.
Well, I know that Tufty, the great Tufnell, I know that he scored 2 runs in 81 minutes at one stage. That, I think, is a...
I hope you include lists, Dave, like the world's tidiest wicket keepers in order. That'd be one I'd like to see.
And would you have room in it for the Don's...
Argument starters.
That's right, argument starters. Would you have room in it somewhere for the Don's batting average?
Oh, well, of course.
Good.
Of course, you know, as all ABC listeners would know that one, of course.
That'd be the title of the book.
Yeah. And on that winning note, it's time to wish Dave all the best in a riding and cricket future. And our school club Buggery viewers, whether they're at home or here in the Mars Bar, to get out their old vinyl copies of Mugs Game and bang them together to thank Dave Warner.
Started with songs, moved on to books. Love that he's mine. Mingle with crooks. Dave Warner, Dave Warner. Student of crime, doing his time. Dave Warner, Dave Warner.
And now we come to that moment of the show where we celebrate your endeavour in the Threads department. Yes, once again, it's time for This Is Living. But before we go to this week's happy winners, let's go and have a look at who greeted the judge this time last week.
Yes, it was Ian, Rebecca and Malty, HG. Here they are in the club. They were off to see Dancing with the Flute at the New South Wales Art Gallery. Edmund Capon was there to welcome them. The spot over the third eye, for some obscure reason, was put on them. It was a total Indian experience, HG, the special water, and then they went indoors for a very personal tour by Edmund Capon. Edmund led us to believe that there are 350 million Indian gods. I think that's probably a little underdone. I would have thought there'd be a lot more than that. But it was a terrifically engaging afternoon for the three of them. They ended up, of course, before the flutes and the drums, and then in to see the dancing with the flute itself, which was very, very engaging. It was a 4-hour performance, HG.
This is living.
Marvellous.
And this week the prizes, well, we've got the Crack Squad temporary tattoos, we've got Great Australian Bites, the Dave Warner Anthology of Humour, we've got Gough's book, Abiding Interests, we've got a double pass to see the Soweto String Quartet this Thursday night and their CD as well, plus...
Actually, the happy couple are off to see Me and My Girl. This is the production by the Sydney Youth Musical Theatre. It's an amateur group, but it's going to be a tremendous night. It opens next Friday night. I'd encourage all to go. It's coming together very nicely, as you can see. And the dancing is sensational. You thought dancing with the flute was good? Yes,
magic. Theatrical magic.
Marvellous, because this is living.
This is living. Yeah, this is living. Ha!
G'day. What's your name?
Darcy Elborn.
Darcy and?
Margaret.
Darcy and Margaret. Have you seen Me and My Girl before?
No, we haven't.
Oh, it's a tremendous experience. It's all showbiz, it's dancing, it's a song. It'll be a tremendous night. You're prepared to take the challenge next Friday night?
We are.
It's opening night. You'll be dressed appropriately?
Yes.
Because?
This is living.
Yes, well, sadly, we come to the end of another club buggery. I've got a very big card this week, Roy. I'm off to see Youth Rock put on by the high school kids out at Orion Hall, Beamish Street, Campsie. It's on every night this week. The Soweto String Quartet plays Wednesday night in Brisbane, Thursday night in Sydney, Saturday night in Melbourne, Monday the 14th Adelaide, Tuesday the 15th in Perth, and, of course, the Amnesty Comedy Festival is on at the basement this week.
Yes, I'll just be watching Channel 10 all day tomorrow, HG. It's all 500cc racing. All day. Wonderful. It's going to be a tremendous day.
As we sign off from the Mars Bar, Roy and I would like to thank Gough Whitlam, Dave Warner, the Soweto String Quartet, the Nissan Cedrics, the brand new Beatles, Ian Terps, Turby, and you, the audience, whether here in the Mars Bar or there at home on the Fumble, Flop and Fiddle. Thanks once again for taking an interest in variety. Finally, it's time for Act 16 in the 1997 Battle of the Sounds. This week's selection, I'm Just a Suburban Boy. Customers, can you hurl the heat beads in the air? Can you rotate the suckling pig? Can you bang the barbecue tools together as you welcome to the...
Yeah, oh, sometimes, yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, I think so, mate. I mean...
And you say here in this thing that before, you know, just before that, the songs that Gus Gould got you to sing were